must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
To you and thank you for joining me this afternoon. This is Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to look at the news making headlines across the continent. My name is Miriam Ogut, and of course the television station is Punchline Africa TV, and of course the day is the 13th of October 2020. So let me just bring you up to date with what is making headlines across the continent, and if there's anything else that is happening out there that you'd like to bring to our attention, please mention it on the comment section, and as usual I'll go through it and I'll share with the rest of our viewers. And of course, you're welcome to engage on the comment section. Thank you so much. And let's start with Nigeria. And protesters in Nigeria's southern state of Rivers are marching to the government house in the state capital, Port Harcourt, in defiance of the governor who banned all forms of protest. Governor Nyesom Wike had on Monday said there was no need for the hashtag EdSARS protest after demonstrations continued in other parts continued in other parts of the country despite authorities disbanding the special anti-robbery squad, which was notorious for unlawful arrests and murder. And then still staying with Nigeria, and Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has promised extensive police reforms as protests against police brutalities continue, despite his announcement that the notorious Special Anti-Robbery Squad has been disbanded. In a video posted on Twitter, he also promised justice for victims of police abuse and expressed regret for the loss of lives in southwestern Oyo State during the protest. Mr. Buhari added that most police officers were hardworking and their reputation of the force should not be tarnished by a few bad eggs. And then we go to, of course, some news from the African Center for Disease Control. And now the center is warning that more than 800 million Africans could be infected with coronavirus if the virus is allowed to spread deliberately with the aim of achieving herd immunity. The projection is a worst-case scenario. This could put the lives of 8.4 million Africans at risk if immunity was to be achieved. Naturally, Africa CDC added herd immunity is a situation in which a sufficient proportion of a population immune to an infectious disease through vaccination or prior illness to make it spread from a person to person unlikely. And then we go to Ethiopia, where at least 12 people have been killed in western Ethiopia's state of Benishangul Gumuz in the second round of violence less than a week, according to the authorities there. A state spokesperson, Melese Beyene, has told the BBC that the violence was a conflict among individuals and that arrests were made. But a senior official from the opposition National Movement of the Mara, Dasaleg Chane, told the BBC that the violence is a continuation of the ethnic-related attacks against minorities. He said the number of fatalities could be as high as 18. And then we go to the next door to Ethiopia there, that is Eritrea, and the free speech organization English Pen has given its 2020 award for International Writer of Courage to the Eritrean poet Emmanuel Asrat. Mr. Emmanuel has not been seen or heard from in 19 years since he was arrested as part of a clampdown on government critics in his homeland. He was the editor of the newspaper Zemen at the time. His brother addressed the online ceremony on Monday, and one of his poems was read out. He was recommended for the award by the Jamaican-born British poet Linton Kwesi Johnson. And then we go to Liberia, where Liberia's President George Weah has asked the U.S. to help with investigations into the mysterious deaths of 3 senior officials in finance-related posts, the state, a link to Liberian news agency has reported. The deaths have sparked rumors of an assassination campaign. AFP news agency reported. LINA quoted Mr. Weah as urging people not to speculate and wait the outcome of the investigation. Mr. Weah had instructed Justice Minister Frank Musa Dean to coordinate his efforts with partners of the government, including the U.S. The news agency there has reported. It named one of the officials who had died as the head of the internal audit agency, Emmanuel Nyesua. And then we go to Libya, where the United Nations stated on Monday that only those who truly carry the best interests of the country at heart and without ulterior motives in the form of political career aspirations will be welcome to participate in the ideally forward-moving inter-Libyan political dialogue scheduled to take place in Tunisia in early November. Tunisian Foreign Minister Othman Jarandi called on his end for direct dialogue between Libyans without interference. The Tunis dialogue, which will begin on the 26th of October by video conference in light of the COVID-19 pandemic before the in-person discussion scheduled for early November, will bring together several members of the High Council of State and the Tobruk Parliament. The talks will also include participants selected by the UN, Williams also added. And then we head to Angola, where Angola's President João Lourenço continues to go after former President José Eduardo dos Santos. In an interview, the Wall Street Journal, Lourenço estimated that the country lost up to $24 billion under the former administration of President José Eduardo dos Santos. According to the president, over half of the figure, that is $13.5 billion, were diverted through fraudulent contracts from state oil companies. Sonangol, one of Angola's leading institutions, it's twice the country's net foreign currency reserves. And just so you know, this state oil company, Sonangol, I think former President Dos Santos had put his daughter to head that institution. What's her name? Right now she's facing charges there in Angola, and also she's Africa's richest woman. But when you look at such a background, I mean, it's casting a lot of doubt on how she must have, gotten all that wealth that she has. Isabel Dos Santos, she's the richest woman in the continent, and you see how, possibly she made some of that money. So here you go. We go to Tanzania. Amnesty International alleges in a report published on Monday that Tanzanian President John Magufuli's government is actively repressing the political opposition as rapidly passed laws restricting the freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and association are being weaponized to control and stifle anyone within the population that opposes the current head of state, a tactic that the human rights NGO state has been employed by Magufuli since his election in 2015. Concerns also surround the questionable 7-day suspension of the ruling party's main political opponent, Tundu Lissu, in early this month, just a few odd weeks before the election on October 28th, which will decide whether the current president and Chama cha Mapinduzi candidate will successfully be voted by Tanzanians for a second term over Lissu, who hails from the Chadema party. And then we go to Uganda, and candidates in Uganda's upcoming parliamentary elections have until Thursday to pay a nomination fee of a little more than $800 to the Electoral Commission. However, some don't have the money, forcing political parties to appeal for support on social media. Last week, Robert Changulanyi, better known as singer Bobby Wine, asked his followers on social media to financially support parliamentary candidates running under his National Unity Platform party. He said that as the nomination period draws to a close, the party has many candidates, especially from western and northern Uganda, who risk being unable to run because they don't have the required 3 million Ugandan shillings, that equals or equates to $800. Wine accused President Yoweri Museveni and his allies of making it expensive to run for office simply to lock out the opposition. And then we come to South Sudan, where the acting Secretary General of the SPLM party says the number of women in government will be increased in the next appointment. This is after a group of activists last week petitioned the Supreme Court over what they call a violation of women's constitutional rights by the ruling SPLM party. They challenged President Salva Kiir's appointment of men only into the 6-state governorship and 3 administrative positions. These positions allocated to SPLM. And then we head to Ghana, where we also have another political storm brewing, or has been brewing, and of course also Guinea. They're heading to their elections there in a couple of days. Matter of fact, closer, maybe 5 or so days, and more than 90 people have been killed in a crackdown in protest against Guinea's President Alpha Conde's bid to seek a controversial term a third term in elections at the weekend, a leading opposition group has said. The 82-year-old is vying for re-election on October 18th, as I said there, maybe 5 days away, after pushing through a new constitution in March that critics said was designed to sidestep a two-term limit in the West African country. Opposition to a third Conde term has brought tens of thousands of Guineans to the streets since mid-October last year. The protests have often turned violent. However, the dozens having killed a constitutional referendum in March was also marred by violence. Hopes of a new political dawn flawed when Conde became Guinea's first democratically elected president in 2010. Like, how do you enter the books of history in your country, being the first president that has been elected democratically, and then you just go out and trash all the gains that you made as being the first democratically elected president, and on top of that, democracy that is still, in the course of development there in Guinea and indeed a lot of places across Africa. But you go and you just rubbish all the gains, and now you decide 2 terms is not enough for you. You go ahead and decide you want to go and have another term that is illegal, and then you go introduce another referendum that was also very violent and was done in a way in the shadows of COVID-19, really, when the world was grappling to find, how masks and all that, you're busy doing a referendum because you knew people are not paying attention, and so many people have died there in Guinea. President Alpha Conde, I think you have done a disservice to your own legacy as the first democratically elected president there in Guinea, and I don't know at what cost. You have already ran your 2 terms that has been guaranteed by the constitution in Guinea, and each term is 5 years. So you did a good 10 years. That was not enough for you to just go home and do other things. So just sit there as an eminent politician in your country and just advise and just help around, But you had to insist on a third term that has costed a lot of lives there in Kenya. I just don't understand this third term dilemma and obsession our leaders have in this continent. Very few of them can just leave and go home peacefully, but majority of them are so obsessed with power that they want to hang on and stay on no matter the cost, even if it means just losing, the people there in that country. So I think the case in Guinea is very, very sad. And as we look for the country to go to its election in October 18th, I think it will be interesting to see. These people died, 90 people were killed just over the weekend and the past few days. Can you imagine? Because they've been protesting. They've been protesting over President Alpha Conde's insistence on going for a third term that they say is illegal. Of course, he had to amend the constitution. He did a constitutional coup there in March to accommodate his greed to run for a third term. And now that is where Guinea is. Chichi Jethro, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for watching. And the rest of you, if there's any other news out there I need to know about, please share in the comment section. When I'm through reading, I think I remain with a few more, and then we can three more to be precise, and then we can get into it. We can talk about the hashtag End SARS. Let me know what you think about it and other news that I've gone through there earlier. So back to East Africa and the wheels of justice. The East African Court of Justice in Arusha, Tanzania, could grind to a halt on November 30th when the terms of its top 2 judges end with no replacements in sight. The EAC Heads of State Summit, which appoints the judges, has not met in 2 years, during which time 7 of the 11 judges at the appellate court have retired without being replaced. Now, without judges, justice cannot be served. We know that. Among the cases at risk of not being heard include one against the lifting of presidential age limits in Uganda. It was filed in May, but is yet to be heard less than 6 months before President Yoweri Museveni runs again in the country's general election in February. Okay. And on court's 11 judges, whose number can be increased on a maximum of 15, serve a 7-year non-renewable term subject to retirement at the age of 70. Now, currently, there are only 7 judges out of the expected 11, and by November 30th, 2 of the 7 shall have retired, leaving the court with only 5 judges. That is according to Eupnalis Okubo, who is the East African Court of Justice's registrar. So we seem to be having a conundrum here, but it's quite interesting, especially during this time, that President Museveni is seeking to go for a third, to run again, not a third time. He's been there for what, 34 plus years, and now in Uganda. And of course, there was a law there that capped the age limit to a certain age, the age of, was it 70 or 75 there in Uganda, and then they removed that sometimes back last year. So somebody went and challenged this in the East African Court of Justice, but now this case cannot be heard, with Uganda only having a few more months before they go to the elections next year in February. There are no judges to listen and to rule on this case that has been pending in this court for quite a while now. I hope it's not on purpose that this is happening there at the East African Court of Justice. And we know the heads of state have not been meeting. Last year it was just, excuse after excuse. Remember, Tanzania, I think, was not ready for the meeting last year. I don't know what was happening. And also Burundi had issues with their previous president, who does not attend any meetings at all. The late now President Pierre Nkurunziza could not leave Bujumbura to go anywhere after the attempted coup in 2015. So him being part of the East African community, really Burundi being part of the East African community, and him being the head of state there, really complicated the running of affairs, and among other issues, of course, from other member states. But that was just one of the reasons as to why, because heads of state have to meet and decide and vote and all that, so he could not attend those meetings in person. And also President Magufuli had his own reasons and why, the other time it failed. So the people have been ready, always wanting to come in and have been very active in the East African community. The three countries, that it would be Kenya, I think Uganda, and also Rwanda. President Paul Kagame has been very active. The rest, of course, South Sudan has been having its problems with even remitting the annual fee to the community. It has been having its own problems there, and I think it was facing some it was facing some problems there, and they were seeking to remove it for a while, to penalize it. And we were having this conversation here, and I was thinking it's not a good idea. South Sudan still needs all of us, but it's unable to meet its obligation. I can't remember how much it owes the community, but it is it $8 million or there, I'm not quite sure, but it is a huge sum of money that I know South Sudan cannot afford right now with its current financial woes. I think it has its own priorities, so I don't think remitting its annual fee to the East African community really even forms part of its priorities. But it's important if you want to be part of something. And we were having this conversation earlier, if you missed it, and we were looking at what the regime changes in Africa and all that. And we had a guest who brought in a very interesting perspective when we were looking at AU and what a disservice it is to this continent. And he reminded us that who are the funders of AU? That will be the US, France, UK, and also China. So if they're funding like over 80% of the functions of African Union, that means that us as Africans, we essentially don't have a say in the runnings of the African Union. And that is the tragedy I think we find ourselves in as Africans. So until we have a say-so, until we are able to come out and even fund our own selves, our own organization, then maybe we shall continue to play a second fiddle, even in an organization that should be about Africans, that should be representing our own aspirations and our own dreams as African Union. So that is the sad truth. So in the case of South Sudan, we require to be there, but also it has to meet its obligation by paying the annual fees there. So it has been a chaotic it has been some chaos in the community, in the East African community there, and now we see the judges, some of them will be retiring, so there'll be no quorum in the appellate court there to even listen to that case that has been filed there against President Yoweri Museveni. Is this by design, or it's just a coincidence? I don't know. And I don't want to think too much into it. I hope they they do that. They solve that problem very quickly so that you have judges there at the East African Court of Justice, whose headquarters are in Arusha, Tanzania. And also, we go to Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe. That's the problem of having a good lunch. Zimbabwe has formally asked South Africa to extradite a former minister and top ally of the former President Robert Mugabe, who is wanted over corruption allegations. The country's prosecuting authority on Monday said former local government minister Xavier Kasukwere must return home to face trial for illegally parceling out land to former First Lady Grace Mugabe's sister. Okay, now that's complicated. And Mr. Kasukwere, who was the ruling ZANU-PF's political commissar by the time Mr. Mugabe was toppled in a military coup in 2017, fled to South Africa during the ensuing upheavals in Zimbabwe. In an extradition request sent to South Africa, Zimbabwe's National Prosecuting Authority said the former minister, who was once touted as future ZANU-PF leader, will receive a fair trial if he is extradited. I don't know if South Africa will honor that. And then we go to Mali, and the African Union on Friday lifted its suspension of Mali, which went into effect after military coup toppled the West Africa's nation's government in August. The decision comes 3 days after the West African regional bloc ECOWAS announced it was ending its tough post-coup sanctions on Mali, saying it wished to back the country's return to civilian rule. The sanctions included border closures and a ban on commercial trade and financial flows, but not basic necessities, drugs, equipments to fight coronavirus, fuel or electricity. So that is the latest from the continent this afternoon. Thank you so much for watching. Or a few more to Bechi Nemeke, you're saying good afternoon from here, wonderful people. We don't believe in end SARS protest, but end Mohamed Yusuf, the president masquerade of Nigeria, and end Nigeria now. Who is Mohamed Yusuf? I don't know this person. Please, to Bechi Nemeke, who is this person? So you don't believe in end SARS because President Buhari, I think, I was reading a certain item, a news article just a couple of hours ago, and they're saying that the young people in Nigeria, made noise until President Buhari heard what they were saying. You protested and you demanded for change, and because of SARS, the special anti-robbery squad there, what they did not just go after the robbers, but they are known to be notorious for breaking the law by doing things that are out of order with what they're supposed to be doing. And so that has caused, and I was seeing a bit of a testimony of people who have been affected by the activities of this, may I call it, terror squad, a part of the police force there in Nigeria. So yesterday, of course, the government came out and said, SARS has been banned, and what they did is take these officers and place them back to other police, other places within the police force there, and the young people there in Nigeria, they were saying, no, we do not want them to be taken back and serve in any kind of false capacity. We want them to be removed because in what they have been doing is not okay, and so we don't want them to continue serving in any discipline force in the country that is Nigeria. But I don't think that has been met, and protests were banned, especially in a place like, I was reading here earlier, the River State, the southern state of Rivers. Rivers had banned the protests, but we see them taking place again there today. And, President Buhari come out and promised an extensive police reform as protest, of course, against police brutality continues there. So he came out and said, we have very hard-working police officers in the Nigerian police force, and the reputation of the force should not be tarnished by a few bad eggs. That is what President Buhari said there. Let me know what you make of this. So to bet you're saying, please, madam, I want to, I don't know if I can put that Nigerian accent. Please, when I ask Mr. Shekau, the Boko Haram leader, he will explain better about Yusuf Mohammed. Okay, I don't know him. Where can I get Mr. Shekau if the whole world is looking for him? I don't want to go into the politics of that. Because a few, I think, weeks ago here, we were doing you are looking at the sponsors of terrorism in the continent of Africa, and particularly Boko Haram there in Nairobi, and a few names came out. So if you know where the Shekau person is, the world is looking for him. Particularly, we've been talking about him so much here because he's leading a group there that has terrorized. And this is what I don't understand. If you're going out there, the young Nigerians, and you did a fantastic job to go there and call for accountability and raise your concerns and say these are not police officers, these are torturers, these are murderers, these are people who arrest you arbitrarily, these are people who commit rapes and violence. They're supposed to be enforcing law and order, but instead they're terrorizing the people. So in the same manner and fashion, I don't understand how a whole terrorist group, Boko Haram, runs a mockery of a whole country. And I don't see people coming out and protesting. In the same fashion, you protested about bad policing. In the same fashion, you should protest about demanding for the insecurity in the country to be addressed. Or maybe because the insecurity is just affecting a part of the country as compared to the rest of the country. So maybe that's why you feel it's not your problem. But I think it is widespread there in Nigeria. So the same fashion that you did, #EndSARS, I think you could take it upon yourselves, as we saw that sort of made our president come out and address this matter. The same way he needs to understand that Boko Haram is also a problem that he should deal with, and not in a by the way manner in which the government has been dealing with there. I don't know if that even makes sense at all, but I think it shows that when you speak, they can listen. When you make noise enough, it's called necessary noise. When you do that enough times, somebody will have to listen. So in the same fashion, can you try? Because Boko Haram is just not a problem of Nigeria. Boko Haram has affected, other countries also across this continent. And if not checked, I know it has already gotten out of hand. Before we know it, it will be. It will have engulfed the whole of this continent, and that is something that we do not want to see. Elvis and so Eyong, thank you so much, and nice to see you this afternoon. I don't know where you're watching us from this afternoon, but there you have it. But President Buhari has promised extensive police reforms. Yes, Elvis, you come from the Anglophone region there, Ambazonia. Good afternoon to you. What's going on there? I think yesterday we were having some news coming from there, and the government was saying to teachers that if you want to go to school, you can go in the Anglophone regions, but, we can give you the army to escort you to work. And I said, okay, now that is not even a good idea. And of course, the teachers refused, because how long are you going to do that? Having army escort teachers to work to and fro so that they can teach and come back home. Are you going to be in their homes then protect them overnight? Because there has been a lot of insecurity in the Anglophone region, in Cameroon there. So I think instead of just treating the symptoms, President Paul Biya should try and lead the country and lead talks and lead something that will find a lasting solution between his government and the Anglophone region there in Cameroon. So having army officials, escort teachers to school. We know the children from that from the Anglophone region have not been going to school. The schools are either not there because they've been burnt down, or they've been closed because of the insecurities, or the villages are been burnt down. So no learning activity has been taking place in that part of the world, and that is quite unfair, because you expect these children 10, 15, 20 years from now to compete in the same space as the children in the other side of Cameroon, who have been going on with their lives, with their schools. They're already disadvantaged. So you're raising a generation that is quite disenfranchised. And so this is a problem, just not for now, but this will be a problem in the future generation, when you realize we were denied an opportunity to go to school. We were denied an opportunity to go and better ourselves. And now I have to go and compete for the same job opportunity while I'm coming from a place that I'm already disadvantaged. I think it's not fair. And this is something that needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be addressed, because those children are missing out in what the rest of the children are getting, and that is education, which is very important. And then we expect them to compete in a level playing field. It's not leveled in the first place. So I think President Paul Biya, you suggesting that the army should be escorting the teachers to work. how long are they going to do that? Is that even a solution of such a problem? I think it's the time your government had a true dialogue with an aim of solving the problem, finding a lasting solution for the problem. With the Anglophones, of course, they're demanding for a referendum because they want to go and have their own state. The same thing, the people from Biafra, they are demanding for. That is something that President Buhari does not even talk about. I don't think it's even in his top list of things he wants to consider. The same way dealing with insecurity is the things that he does not even want to consider there. So that is where we are this afternoon. Of course, the elections in Uganda coming up later next year, early next year in February next year, and of course the nomination money there that is required for anybody who's willing to run is quite high for the local, especially for the opposition party members there who wants to vie as members of parliament there. The fees are a bit too high, so they have been trying to get some money from online and their supporters. I'm sure President Museveni will come out, they'll devise a way to stop even some of this online funding and raising of funds. I'm sure the Electoral Commission will come up with some laws that will even ban that. The same thing we see happening there in Tanzania. What a shame. What is happening there in Tanzania? Democracy there is truly on trial. The things that are happening under President Magufuli. I know we are very wonderful neighbors and we respect Tanzanians and we love them and we live very freely and we do business with them and they're wonderful people. But the political dynamics in that country truly is something that, there has been. I know we have our problems here in Kenya. We are perfect. The things we're still fighting, the things we're still demanding for, this things we still want. But there are certain freedoms that you cannot joke around here in Kenya. As long as you do it in a way that is respectful, you're not contravening on the other person's freedoms, and also you're doing it in line with the law, and whatever you're doing out there, be it protesting or whatever it is you're doing, or holding a public rally or whatever it is not tantamount to inciting people or just breaking the law generally. Otherwise, you are allowed to go out and express yourself, and we see what is happening here between even President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy, has just decided, I'm just going to go on and do my thing, even as I wait for our time to lapse, so that I just go and vie for the presidency of this country, while he's still the deputy of President Uhuru Kenyatta. In many democracies, that is something that isn't heard of. Even us, it's something that we grapple with here, and because it's part of the constitution, so we have to respect it. But the dynamics of the Kenyan politics, it's quite interesting. It's just one of a kind. But that cannot happen in a place like Tanzania. I mean, how? Or other democracies, across even the African continent. So Tanzania democracy has truly been under trial there, and a lot of things are happening. The opposition has been under attack. A lot of freedoms have been, being controlled highly by the state. Even the freedom of expression, the media there, you cannot function freely because the government has put in laws that are tantamount to just muzzling you up, which is quite unfortunate. And now Amnesty International has come out in a report and is alleging, the report was published on Monday, and it's alleging that Tanzanian President John Magufuli's government is actively repressing the political opposition as rapidly passed laws restricting the freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, like he bans rallies. The country banned rallies by the opposition leader there. He was suspended for 7 days while they're going for an election. Tanzania is going to its elections on the 28th this month. Also, as I said there earlier, where is it? Guinea, also, they're going to the elections on the 18th. That is about 5 days from today. And also the same month, Ivory Coast is going to its elections on the 31st of this month. So October is, it seems to be packed with very interesting political activities. These three countries are going through very interesting times in their democracy. So we shall be here to report it for you and to bring you up to date. Thank you so much for watching this afternoon. This has been Diaspora Dispatches, where we've been looking at the news-making headlines across the continent. My name is Miriam Ogutu. A very good afternoon to you, and it is about 40 minutes past 3 p.m. here in Nairobi, East African time. Bye-bye for now.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.